Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and today I am finally getting around to filming a review of a book that I read back in May, I think. So I apologize if some of the things that I'm gonna say are like, well, I liked it, but I don't really remember exactly why. But I will still do my best to review this book. And the book I am talking about is The Children of Gods and Fighting Fighting Men by Shauna Lawless, which is the first book in the Gale Song series. The second book, which is Words of Kings and Prophets, I believe, or Words of Prophets and Kings, comes out in September or October, sometime in autumn. This book was the book club pick for my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries back in May, I believe, actually. And that book club is all about reading adult fantasy written by women or genderqueer folks. So this one is adult fantasy. It is adult historical fantasy set in Ireland at the end of the 10th century. However, our two main characters, I believe, are not historical figures. Not generally. Like, there's a lot of historical figures appearing in this story, but I don't believe our two main characters are historical figures. I forgot what Shauna Lawless exactly said in the author's note at the end. But basically, you're following two women. One of them, let me quickly go to the pronunciation guide, because as we all know, Irish has pronunciations that are not intuitive to people growing up with pronouncing things in, like, you know, a Germanic Roman way necessarily always. So I did take a semester, 2 semesters of Irish. However, I forgot everything. So let's see, where was it? So one of the women that we follow is Gormla, who is wife to the King of Dublin. However, after the king dies, since her son is, I don't know, 5th to the throne currently, she knows that his life is not necessarily very secure, and so she fights to make sure that he hopefully will end up on the throne after his father, so that he can be safe, because that is what she wants. She's also one of the last descendants of the Fomorians, which is this legendary race from Irish mythology, and one of the first people to live on the Isle of Ireland according to mythology, and she can do fire magic. The other character that we follow is Fola, who is a healer, and she's also a Toda de Danann. The pronunciations. I apologize right now for the pronunciations and for my butchering of Irish. I once again did not do my due diligence before the video. But she is part of another one of the legendary races of, or legendary first races of Ireland, and one of the mortal enemies of the Fomorians. However, she is very pacifist. She is a healer, and her people have decided that they will keep away from the things that men or humans do. However, her brother, who is the leader of her people, decides that he still wants to send her as a spy to the court of a chieftain, king type character. And so that's what she does, and that's where she goes, while also taking care of the son and child of her sister. So we have two female characters in this story that are both in a certain way mothers, and both of their lives very much center around a child. As always, I will start with the negative things in this story and then end with the more positive things. The main negative thing that I have about this book is that this does my main gripe with a lot of stories, and that is that both POVs that we get in the story are first-person perspective. I just want authors to please stop with that, because first of all, it does not make narrative sense. When you have one first-person perspective, okay, a lot of times you just assume it's a character telling their story. I do prefer it more if there is a framing device to a first-person perspective, but it's not necessarily needed. However, two first-person perspectives does not make sense narrative-wise. Like, I'm sure you can do something with the framing device where it does make sense. However, most of the time, especially if you don't have a framing device, it just does not make sense. And second of all, just 90% of authors, even if you're just amazing at writing and really, really good at telling a story, most authors still are not good enough to make the two voices distinct enough from each other. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say that voices-wise the two characters were very distinct. However, what I will give this story still, even though it does the thing with two first-person perspectives, is that I never really was confused whose perspective I was reading, because just the way they judged things was different enough that it just made sense, even if the way that voices were written wasn't different enough. Does it make sense? Anyway, also I'm so shiny because it's just currently it's over 30 degrees and it's so hot and I hate it. But anyway, so that was my main gripe with the story. Now to the positive things. I absolutely loved both of the main characters. I really adored them, especially Gormla. Like, she is such an interesting character because she is not a good person whatsoever. She does not care about most people. She's also kind of sexist. Like, she will really go at women a lot of times, and like in a way where she's like not thinking necessarily that women are lesser than men, but if women can't stand up for themselves, she's just going at them, and she's just like, what did you expect? This is a man's world. You need to get over yourself. But she's also not the type of character that actively will try and better the life of women and, you know, to be there for fellow women. But she's like, everyone's on their own. Every woman is on their own. I made it. Everyone else needs to too, but at the same time she's just raging against men who want to marry her off to someone else all the time. But yeah, all of that makes her just this really, really interesting character. She's definitely not a likable character or a likable person, but she's very, very interesting. And then on the other hand, we have Fola, who at the beginning I thought was kind of boring and kind of uninteresting to me, because she's this very naive person, you know, healer type character and everything. But by the end she really, really grew on me, and by the end I preferred her over Gormla, which I didn't think that would happen. So yeah, there was just, she was like a really interesting character as well. She has her opinions and she's very set in those opinions, but also, especially at the beginning of the story, she lets herself be pushed around a lot. And yeah, I found her a very, very interesting character as well. So the two main characters definitely are the strong part of the story. Aside from that, something that I find very interesting as well is that both of the characters are set on opposing sides. And the way the story is going, I mean, I do believe that there's gonna be like a big evil or like a central conflict that will put the two of them on the same side possibly in the next book or in the next books. But the way it's going right now, the two of them are on opposing sides, but you don't really root for either of them, because you know for one to win, a lot of people on the other side would die. And so it just makes for this really, really interesting reading experience, because you're really just following along and not really, you're rooting for both of them essentially. But at the same time also not, because, you know, you don't want either of them to hurt. And it's this very, very interesting narrative that I just really enjoyed while reading this book. And I can't wait to see how it plays out in the next book. Also was very intrigued by the end of it, and I'm very happy to say that I have an arc of the second book that I haven't started yet because the publication is still a few months off. But I'm just very excited already to get started on the second book. Something else that I just found really interesting for me personally is that I read another historical fantasy just this year, which is what was it called? I think The Widow Queen. Yeah, The Widow Queen over there, which is set in the same time period as Children of Gods and Fighting Men. And that one obviously follows, like the Widow Queen, not obviously, but the Widow Queen follows a main character who's from Poland, or what will later become Poland. However, that character is also like twisted into the lives of some of the other characters that appear in this book. Most centrally, Olaf Tryggvason, I forgot the last name. Like Olaf, one of the kings of Norway, or one of the first kings of Norway. And I just found it really interesting because the way this character is, or this historical figure is characterized in both of the books is very different, to the point that it took me a while to get that it was the same character that appeared in this book and in the other book. To be honest though, in this book, he's a POV character. In this one, he just plays a minor side role. Aside from that, the author did say that while this is heavily influenced by history and takes a lot of notes from history, there are some historical figures in the story as well. It's not 100% historically accurate. Some events from history were taken and kind of just pulled closer together to have less of a time span between them. Other characters, their names were changed, I believe, so that it would be easier to read for a person, to follow along with the story, so that the names aren't too similar to each other. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this. I loved this kind of look into Irish history / mythology, and I can't wait for a second book, and I can highly recommend it to a lot of people if you're not bothered by the 2 first-person POVs. Otherwise, just be aware that that's a thing that's there in the book. And to be honest, if it wasn't for those 2, I probably would have given this more stars. Probably still not 5 stars, but as it is, I gave this 4 stars. So yeah, with that, that is it for my review of The Children of Gods and Fighting Men. If you've read this book, tell me your thoughts on it in the comments down below. If you haven't read it, tell me that I make you want to read it. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. All the links to my social media as well as to the book club that I mentioned will be linked down below, so go and check those out, and I hope I'll see you very soon.